I've now slept on the 8 Sleep Pod 5 core most nights for the last 8 months, and in this video I'm going to share what it's been like to use for such a long period of time and what's changed since my initial review, which I did after around 3 months. If you haven't seen that video, I do recommend watching it as well. I went into a lot of depth about the app and the features, so it was a more technical review. But after that, I just felt that it would be a good idea to use it as naturally as possible without constantly thinking about it and doing tests. And I also thought it would be a good idea to counterbalance some of the hype and glossy marketing and celebrity endorsements with just some everyday experience. So I'm going to cover some of the less glamorous but important points like the maintenance, buttons, and what to do with the water tubes if you have a solid bed head like we do, and what it's actually like to use over the long term. So let's start with probably the most important point I can share, which is that the heating and cooling have been very effective and we've had no problems at all with the water system and the pad. There's been no leaks, mould or mildew, the material of the mattress pad is still fine after 8 months and the padding hasn't compressed, so we still don't feel the tubes under us and it's very comfortable to sleep on. The hub and app have also been very smooth and easy to use, and the only problem was caused by an Amazon Web Services outage one day last year, which I'll discuss in a bit. Other than that, everything has worked really well. I also upgraded my thermal imaging camera to see how the pad looks with the cooling and heating maxed out, and you can see in this recording that the cover can be very warm on one side while staying cool on the other. In this recording, I first lay on the bed for an hour with the pod off. You can see the surface is quite warm after I get up. Next I lay on it for an hour with the cooling on -1, and it's clearly a bit cooler underneath me than with the pod off. And finally I lay on it for an hour with the cooling maxed out, and the surface stays even cooler. So one practical point I've really liked is how little maintenance there is. Other than occasional dusting, I've only really had to do 3 things. I've had to top up the water reservoir twice, which surprised me as I expected it to be a bit more frequent. It wasn't even completely empty both times, but after a few months I started to think I should probably do something. And after 6 months they sent me the maintenance insert replacement. They do that every 6 months, and this was very quick and easy to change over. All I had to do was pop the old one out and clip in the new one. It took less than a minute to do, and it's much better than messing around with liquid cleaning solutions. So even though I got used to the more regular and time-consuming maintenance of the ChiliPad Dock Pro, for example, it is really nice hardly ever having to think about maintenance with the Pod 5. So I bought the Pod 5 last year and installed it in early August, and now we're in April we've had a chance to use it in all 4 seasons, and it's been equally good in both hot and cold weather. And really there are probably 3 main ways that we use it for the temperature control. Even though we sometimes have the same temperature, I quite often have a bit of cooling while Irene at the same time has some heating, so the dual zones are fantastic. Secondly, when the weather and bedroom temperature are more consistent, it's nice setting your preferred temperature zones for the night and then just leaving the autopilot to do its thing with small adjustments. And thirdly, I like how easy it is to quickly adjust the temperature on specifically colder or hotter nights, or if I've exercised late for example and got into bed just feeling a bit too hot. One thing I've noticed and found quite interesting is how fairly similar temperatures feel very different during the year. For example, on the -10 to +10 scale, I often find in the summer that just -1 or -2 is enough to keep me feeling cool. But then in the winter, just 0 or +1 has been enough to keep the bed feeling warm and cosy. And really there's only a few degrees difference between those temperatures. So for me it's more the case that it seems to keep the surface under me at a moderate and comfortable temperature rather than having to max out the cooling or heating. And that's good because it means lower power consumption and less noise from the fan. Now in my original review I talked about how much I liked having buttons on the sides of the mattress pad, but actually over time this has turned out to be one of the best features and we both use them a lot. I asked Irene the other day what her favourite things were about the Pod 5 and she said it was the heating, the vibrating alarms and the buttons. And that kind of surprised me because in the beginning she only ever used the app to make temperature changes and it took me a while to convince her to use the buttons. So the main benefit is being able to quickly adjust the temperature without needing your phone. For example, if the temperature drops dramatically at night and the autopilot adjustments are too subtle, we can bump it up with a quick button tap or two, and vice versa if we've overheated under our thick winter duvet. Secondly, it's great being able to snooze or turn off the vibrating alarm without needing the app. But one change I'd really like to see is a triple tap option so you don't have to choose between either having snooze or turning it off, but you could do both. And I was also thinking the other day that it would be really useful to integrate an optional voice announcement so you know what temperature you've changed it to if you end up making multiple changes in the night without using the app. But overall, the physical buttons you can easily reach in bed would make it pretty hard for me to go back to using a cooling and heating system that doesn't have them. I do have a couple of practical gripes though. Firstly, I still wish the hub was shorter so I could get it underneath my bed frame like I did with the Dock Pro and BedJet. But a more important issue is setting it up if your mattress meets a solid headboard like mine does, with very little space for the water tubes. I asked the 8 Sleep chatbot about this on their website, which said you should ideally have space for the water tubes to hang freely so they aren't kinked or compressed. The thing is though, my bed frame doesn't have that space. So in the end I bought a pack of these sticky blocks and stuck them onto my headboard to create a vertical channel for the water tubes to drop down, and then they reach the bed slats and they can fall through those and go to the hub. I'm still not entirely sure if it's the ideal solution, but it seems okay. I think 8 Sleep could be clearer about this on their website though. And I was thinking they could even add some wedge shapes to the packaging foam that protects the hub as a temporary or even permanent fix. Another point we're both really happy about is how quiet the Pod 5 is. The fan obviously makes some noise, but I never hear it when I'm wearing earplugs or headphones, and it doesn't disturb Irene at all, which is great because she doesn't use earplugs. And the fan's actually been remarkably consistent over the 8 months. In fact, I'm so used to it now that I don't notice it at all, even when I'm reading in bed. If you do want the hottest or coldest temperatures, you will need to tolerate a bit more noise though. But in our experience, you can get away with using it all year round on moderate temperatures and only ever hear the fan on its quietest setting. As I said at the start, after my first review, I really wanted to spend a good chunk of time just using the Pod 5 as naturally as possible. And what I found is that even though I always make sure that the temperature feels right when I go to bed, I just don't check the sleep and health metrics data in the morning as religiously as I used to. Interestingly, I finally bought the Oura Ring 4 after I accidentally put the 3 in the washing machine. But just like the 3, the 4 often has different sleep data to the 8 Sleep. To be fair, they do sometimes appear to line up quite well, as you can see in these sleep stages graphs. However, they're often quite different, as you can see on this night. Now, because I wear my Oura Ring 24/7 and it also takes my daily activity into account, I tend to check the Oura app more frequently. However, I do prefer to check the overall trends on the 8 Sleep app because I find them easier to navigate and a bit clearer. I also have a bit of a bad habit of forgetting to charge my Oura Ring, which obviously isn't an issue with the Pod 5 because it's always plugged in. Having said all that, if I have an especially bad or an amazing night's sleep, I quite like to check both apps to see if they agree with those outliers. But honestly, most mornings, if I feel good, I don't bother with either of them and just get on with my day. Another time I'll check the 8 Sleep app more carefully though is if I'm unwell. I find it interesting to see if the health check picks it up, which it sometimes does. But it still bugs me that that feature is hidden behind the Elite subscription tier. So in my original review, one of my biggest criticisms was about the subscription model, but there are a couple of extra points I want to make about the dependency you'll have on the company. Firstly, last October there was a massive Amazon Web Services outage which affected many companies from Netflix to major banks. And 8 Sleep pods also temporarily froze because they were reliant on the cloud. Now the good thing is that the company quickly rolled out a Bluetooth offline mode, which is great, but it did highlight the dependency on the company and app for the system to work. And that got me thinking, what would happen to my pod if the company ceased to operate? To find out, I patiently interrogated their chatbot and support, and eventually they confirmed that the app and pod would no longer work. So not only do you have to pay an ongoing subscription on top of the initial cost, you also need the company to keep the entire system working and send you the 6 monthly maintenance inserts. So I think it's important to understand that buying a pod also means buying into the long-term success of the company. Now, I should add at this point I have no reason at all to believe that the company won't be around for a long time to come. And to be fair, it's the same with a lot of smart tech. For example, if something happened to Aura, pretty sure this ring would end up in a cupboard. Then again, one of the alternatives I talk about a lot, the ChiliPad Dock Pro, does at least have the very basic heating and cooling available without Bluetooth, Wi-Fi or an app installed. Overall then, the 8 Sleep Pod 5 has gone from being new sleep tech that I keep a very close eye on to a core part of our bedroom and sleep, and something that just works well in the background without needing constant attention. And we both definitely miss it when we're on holiday or visiting family, especially me. Or as Irene put it, I've become addicted to bed cooling and I moan when I don't have it, which is a fair point. But the thing is, the bed cooling and heating, those dual zones, are so good and so reliable that even if there was no sleep tracking and health metrics data, I'd still be very happy with it. And features like the vibrating and thermal alarms, the physical buttons, the quiet fan, and the minimal maintenance all give it an edge over the other cooling and heating systems I've used. The main downsides are still the bulky hub, the price and subscription, along with the cloud and company dependence. So I still think the ChiliPad Dock Pro is a good alternative for people who just want the bed temperature control without the extra smart ecosystem or subscription fees. And the BedJet 3 is also a good option, especially if you have night sweats or want a system you can easily move from place to place. But in terms of functionality and all-round comfort, I still think the Pod 5 Core is the better system. And honestly, when the day inevitably comes that I feel that I should really get around to testing a new cooling and heating system for my website and YouTube channel, I'm definitely going to be a little bit sad, because if I didn't do that, I'd keep using this one for a long time to come. Now, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. It's always good to hear from you. And also, if you haven't subscribed already, it'd be great if you could do that to keep in touch and see future reviews. Thanks for watching. Sleep well.